Good morning everyone and welcome to the heart wrap tutorial. This is the second in the heart series. We will be making this heart design, and I had a request for a variation of this bale, so we will actually be ending with two different bales on two different stones. So first we're going to be doing this exact design with the curly cues, and instead of that rose that we have there, we will be using a bead. So this is a 32 heart. This one is a obsidian, and I will be using this faceted mother of pearl as an accent for that. Tools, we have the bale making pliers, your bent nose pliers, cutters, wire straighteners, and needle nose chain nose pliers. We will also be using a pin vise. This is a double-sided pin vise. I use this a lot only because it's my oldest one, and it's loosened up and it works really well. The other kind of pin vise I've used in some of my videos is the single hand drill, which works very well too, but sometimes because it's still quite new, it jams on me, so I tend to use the other one more. Alright, so let's get started. I've already mentioned the tools. The wires that I'm going to be using are parawire. This one is 21 gauge square and 21 gauge half round. These are both silver plated, the tarnish resistant wires, and let's get started. So for the 32 heart, because we're going to be having some design details, just like I measure these out from other projects, it's going to be the same way. We're going to be taking the wires about 3 times the perimeter of the stone. Okay, let me just adjust this a bit. And there you go. Alright, so let's get started. I have cut out 4 lengths of this wire, and I've straightened 3 of them. The way I straighten them is just hold on to one end with your flat nose or your needle nose pliers, and then just gently with your wire straightener go first one way on the square and then the other way. It doesn't have to be super flat. You're just trying to get out any kinks that it might have from being in this bowl, and then just run it through your fingers so you get a fairly straight wire, plus it warms up with the heat from your hands and makes it more workable. All right, let's just get this a bit zoomed in right there. So I have 4 lengths of wire, and I have about 8 inches of the half round wire. I'm gonna speed through this one a little bit because we've already covered how to bind your wires in the other tutorials. I have to adjust the settings, trying something different. Doesn't look like it wants to cooperate with me, so let's try this. Okay. Yeah, seem to have more of a workspace that's in frame. Alright, so you stack your wires next to each other. Half round wire with the flat side to your bindings, and give yourself a bit of a tail, up and over. Pull firmly, not too hard. You don't want the wires to get crushed together. You want them to sit next to each other. Okay. Again, up and over. Gently tap making sure at all times that your wire is sitting next to each other, just like that, one on top of each other, stacked, not crushed together, as close to each other as possible, the wraps. And somewhere in the center of your frame wires, the square wires. Firm tension so you don't have any bubbling. And you want about roughly a little over an inch of wrapping. I'm going to end them both on the same side. Trying a different angle this morning. So please bear with me while I try to adjust it to the frame. I have to do this standing up. All right. So the side where it ends is your inside, the other side is your outside. Now you can adjust these bindings so they're roughly in the center of your wire. You have about the same length on each side. You come in the center for bindings, just a wee bit to off center, so when you bend it, you have approximately the same amount of bindings on each side. And it looks like I may be a bit off, so I'm just going to straighten it out gently again. Go back here. Even if it is a bit asymmetrical, it doesn't matter. Embrace the asymmetry because it will give you a slightly different look, something more unique. You don't want that bend to be super sharp just yet because we're going to be doing some winding and adjusting around that stone of ours. All right, the top wire, again, we're going to be using a pin vise to give it the diamond cut effect. So again, this is covered in the other tutorial as well. I'm just going to talk while I do this really quickly. So your pin vise is in, tighten it, curl. The other side, again, the top one. And you can do more than one wire. But with this design, there's only one wire that comes up. Oh, the one time. Okay, tighten. Normally, if we didn't have this curve in, I would ask you to hold on to the edge over here with your flat nose, your bent nose, or your chain nose pliers, just so the wire doesn't get pulled out of its binding. But since this is flat, we're just going to use this sort of like as a lever. So I'm holding on to this on this end and just twisting it till I have about the same kind of twists on each side. And I really love doing this with the square wires because it gives it that really cool diamond cut effect. Now, in the previous one, in the Sideswept Heart, we just curled these up. That's what it looks like on the back. With this one, we're going to be giving it a seat. If you saw this in the teaser and the other end of the other video as well, we're going to give it that seat that we've done in the other tutorials, but we're also going to give it a seat on the top, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's start with the back first. Take your bindings, the back wire, bring it straight up. Same here. This is just to ensure you've got the angles right and you're not kind of poking in between your wires. So just get it straight up from here. Okay. Now you go in with your pliers. So in this case, a chain nose pliers. Hold that very edge. Trying to see it. Okay, there you go. So hold that very edge there. I would say about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters in over there, and then you just hold this long wire and bend this in. So you have this little bend. That part of the wire was coming straight, and now this one is going to go parallel. About the same distance, you're going to do that to this side as well. You're going to hold that and bend that in. So you have this little seat and kind of like an arrow shape. Okay, you're going to do that same thing to the front, the top wire over here. It's right there. I'm going to try and zoom that in a little bit and move that up. All right, so just like that, bring that straight up. Bring this straight up. Take your pliers, hold it right there, bend this so you have that thing. It's basically exactly the same in the front and in the back. Okay, so here you have it. This is where we are so far. Now we're going to start gently, starting with the front wire. I'm going to gently shape it. Same thing here, we're going to gently shape this side. Going on to the back wire, shape that. Shape this one a little tighter. Sorry, get that in the frame. Shape this one a little tighter than the outside one, because we want that as a support for the back. Then you come to your 2 middle wires, also start gently shaping it. The reason we're shaping it is because if you're holding your stone down, if you have a stone like I do that's a high gloss polish, it tends to slip out of its setting, just making it a little bit more difficult and wonkier. Okay, so you're just shaping that like so. I'm going to adjust this camera a bit. I seem to be working more towards this side. All right, so coming back to your stone, set your stone in right there. You have your seat, tighten that wire up a bit and set it down flat on your mat, and then start shaping this around the stone. Start with the 2 middle wires, and you want those just to lie straight. This one goes a little bit over on top. All right, when you get to here, let your stone go for a bit. We're going to keep this stack the same, but we're going to bend it sideways, a little bit away from your stone. Same thing on this side, about the same distance too. We're going to start, this is only so that your wires don't get tangled up and kind of in each other's way while you're trying to shape it. Okay, so just got a rough shape right now. I'm going to open that one up a bit. Put your stone back in. Now hold this part against the bottom. Come in here and holding your entire stone with hand. You could tape it down. I just like to hold that part, the cleft of the heart, as a lever, press down backwards like this towards the point, and that also tells you where the center is, so you want your bail to be centered. I have about so I can get my thumb in there, so about, oh, how much is that? About centimeter and a bit. of distance up there. This stack stays to this side, this stack stays to this side. Start straightening them up. So not only is your 4 wires from each side stacked next to each other, like they're stacked together here, this one is stacked together, they're going to sit flat against each other over here. Again, push this back down and shape them so it's nice and tight. Right now your stone may be a little loose, and that's okay. We're going to start bending it slightly over the rounded part of that cleft on the side over here, so your stone doesn't slip upwards. Okay, so here's where we are right now. The front will look the same as the back, and we can adjust the shapes of these as we go along. Don't have to worry about that just yet. What we're going to worry about now is binding these down so that your stone doesn't move too much in its setting, and we can get to the bail. All right, so I have a length of wire cut. For the bail, because we are going to be wrapping all of that center part of the bail, we want to make sure that your wire doesn't end somewhere here, so that you're kind of left having to splice the wire in. The bail is one part you don't want to splice any wire in with this kind of setting. If you're weaving and you run out of wire, you can always splice it in, and it's usually easier to hide, and also it won't catch on anything. With this setting, I like to give myself a little bit more rather than less, because you don't want that half round wire to unravel. All right, so back to our setting. Hold that down. We are going to give ourselves a tail of about 1 inch and a bit. Actually, make that 2 inches, with the flat side against all of the bindings, a couple of inches. Hold all of those bundles from this bundle and this bundle tight together, and start wrapping. So we got 1, 2. Make sure each time as you're going that you're kind of straightening this with your fingers, and you're ensuring the flat side remains against the bindings, because that's what's going to hold it together. So about 3 binds, I would say, and we can push it down closer to the cleft. Let's make that 5. So that's 4 and 5 binds. Push that down. Now we're going to take these 2 twisted wires that are the first wires over here, move the right one to the right and the left one to the left, or you can just move them both forward. That's okay too. Move them both forward and continue binding. Hang on, let me just make sure I still have the flat side down, because I think I may have turned that around. I did. So I'm just gonna turn that back with the flat side down. Now the rest of the wires we're going to bind twice. So you started with 8 wires, 4 from each side. You're now down to 6 wires, and you're going to go twice around all of them. Okay. When you get here, you're going to take 2 of the front wires again. So 1 from each side. These are the 2 front wires. Get them both forward, push them out of the way, and now you're left with 4 wires. Take your binding again and go around it. 1. Actually, now you just continue to bind this for a bit. I would say about, let's get there. I'll give you the measurements as we go. Okay, so I'm just going to bind this section. It's going to look like that. And I'll be back in a second. It's just difficult to see if your wires are, especially with the silvery one, it's a little difficult to see it with the camera as your eye. So when you have that nice and flat over there, You can hold on, again, hold on to that cleft there, and or you can just hold on to the pendant and just keep going around. Now you don't want this to be this far spaced out. You want your bindings to be closer together, because if they are far away, when you start pushing those bindings together, it's going to create bubbling, and you don't want that. Okay, so your bindings need to be close to each other. You can do it one at a time, or if you have it nice and tight there, you can hold that tightly and then just rotate your pendant so that you're coiling around all of these. And at this point, this doesn't have to be flat. They all are just going to be kind of like rounded. So like this over here, they're going to all be rounded over there. Okay, so you're wrapping around the last 4 wires. You have 4 coming to the front, the 2 twisted, and the next 2 in the sequence. All right, so you're holding your flat wire with your thumb, with the flat side against your bindings, and you're just rotating your pendant, making sure your flat wire is against the square wires as you keep going around. Now we're going to give this, you can make your bail shorter. It doesn't have to be as long as I'm making it. I'm just giving it that look of sort of that elongated elegance kind of look. So I'm going to give it, you should have enough that you have about ½ an inch. Actually, let's do this by this way. So about a ½ an inch going up a half. So about, let's give it slightly more than an inch. Okay. When you have a small stone, this kind of gives it that length. That'll look really cool. All right, and then you push these down. I think that should be enough. We have about just slightly over an inch, maybe a couple more wraps. Oh, to go back to this, I had about 18 inches of this half round wire. All right, now before we go down here, we're going to take that initial tail and go in through all of these bindings. Actually, hang on, we'll do that later. Leave that for now. So now we bring up these wires next to each other. So the ones that are not twisted will go up next, up here, and up next to this over here, and then the twisted wires. And you want the twists to be a little bit more than where your binding ends. So I'm going to twist a little bit more of these wires. And here we go. Tighten that, hold that nice and firm, and twist a bit more till you have about the same kind of same amount of twists on the extension that you're putting in there. Okay, and then that comes and gets stacked next to these wires. We now need our, pull this nice and tight and move it out of the way. 1 second, please. Just give me a moment. I seem to have twisted that wire a tiny bit, so I'm going to just fix that tiny bit of a tangle there. So we're going to move that original wire out of the way. We have these wires coming out. So you have the wire that you just wrapped the one next to it will be the one that's untwisted, and then the twisted wires on the end. Just going to straighten this wire out a tiny bit, so you want that flat edge to be visible. All right, now we're going to go and get our bail making pliers, and I'm using the 5th step over here. You want to be in the center of those bindings. This end should come and meet over here. So we're kind of going to go in here, take all of those wires together, squish them together, and bend them forward. You can also use a pen, a pencil, if you think that that section of it is too short. So we're going to do that. Make sure that your twisted wires are on the outside edge, and the untwisted wire is right next to your section that you just bound. And this one wants to twist on me. Just lift that up, put that in. Okay, so this is your segment right here. To bind these now, your binding wires coming in from behind. Move your twisted wires slightly out of the way. And you could just bind all of them. That's okay. That's what I did with this one. I just bound all of them together. But with this one, what I did is I did a staggered, like we did a staggered wrapping around when we started moving them separately. That's what we're going to do. We're going to stagger them in. So your binding wire, again with the flat side behind these wires, is going to come in and catch these two untwisted wires. So you're going to have your bound bail and these once come around it, and so your stitch is going to now be around all of these. Pull it gently and go around it. Let's do it once more. So just around the two untwisted square wires and your binding wire that you have been wrapping the bail with. Okay, so you have that stitch there. You can just gently tap it with your flat nose or your chain nose pliers. Now we're going to go and catch all of these. So coming in again from behind, you're going to catch all of these wires once, and then a second time. Okay, when you come in the second time, push this front towards the back, come in all the way here behind, and from your back wires, the seat wire that you have in the back, go in through there to the front, in between that twisted wire, just like that. So you're catching that, pull it nice and tight. All of these wires that you have in your frame are caught once. You go in behind your back seat wire, come in through here and go once and twice. So you've anchored that wire. Snip off with just about, like maybe 1 millimeter and a bit, just a tiny bit. And you can either take your bent nose or your chain nose pliers and bend that in. Nice and tight. Okay. Now your original binding wire, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to come in. This one is coming in the different direction, so I'm going to take this, go around all of your binding wires once, and come in once more, because this has a bit more binding on this side, just to make it a bit symmetrical. Go in just through that seat wire over there, pull it through. You can use your pliers, but don't pull it too hard. Have your finger right there. You don't want this to kind of pop up and go all wonky on you. So once and twice, nice and tight next to each other. And you can snip this on the inside and just tuck that in, tuck it down. It's not going to catch on anything. This one needs to be tucked down a bit more. And just use your fingers, feel around, see what needs to be done. And now we can adjust our wires. We want to make sure there's two coming, the ones that are the center wires are coming over the side of the frame. Your seat, you can adjust it, shape it so it's kind of symmetrical on both sides. If you kinked it up slightly like I did, you can straighten that kink out a bit. You can adjust that. It's pretty on both sides. It's pretty much going to be reversible. Alright, so for this one, we are going to do the curly cues on the front. Rule of thumb, what I like is if there's a stone that I'm working with that has a lot of stuff happening, a lot of character patterns, I like to not cover up the face of that, even if it is with a curly cue. With this one, the pattern it's kind of all over. It wasn't like one specific element, so it kind of worked well with this one with the curly cues. Because this one is rather, but I don't want to say not plain, but it's got a flash to it, but the overall color is all the same. So the curly cues would actually give it that little extra sort of a design element over there and make it look kind of cute. With this one, we're going to do something different. All right, so move your twisted wires first to the side. So the first one, twisted wire. Second one, I seem to have wound these around. There you go. All right, so twist, twist, plain one, plain one. Get these to the side. Okay, now we're going to take this binding and have one wire come out of each one and take these two and move it to the side. Actually, we're going to take it behind. So let's lift them up a bit, curl them.